You're listening to The Riff, a podcast by North Point Church. There's a lot more to the Christian journey than what can be presented in a 30-minute time slot from a stage on Sunday morning. Our host and lead pastor, Jeremy Johnson, highlights the vision of North Point Church and the Christian journey through stories, interviews, and unfiltered faith ramblings. We hope the conversations will help you engage in how faith interacts with your life. I think we're ready. Let's go for it.
Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of The Riff. I gotta tell you, I interviewed Andy Thornton for today's episode, and we just had a good time talking. Matter of fact, we almost had to just cut out about 5 minutes of laughing. We should never sit together in any important meeting, but we ended up sitting together on this. We had a great time. Andy's a campus pastor over at Dream Center campus. Love having him on the team. If you know Andy, you know he is full of life and reflects Jesus' love. If you don't know Andy, you're going to get a taste of it here. I hope this is an encouraging episode for you. Thanks for joining us. Well, thanks for joining us on another episode of The Riff. Today, I have a friend, and the truth is, for many of you, he might be a friend of yours too. Now that I'm thinking about it, Andy Thornton's our guest. Andy Thornton. I just realized I assume we're friends, but you're so friendly. What if it is true we're friends, right?
It's true.
Because I was thinking you're so friendly, maybe I wouldn't even know. You're just being nice to me. We're friends.
We're friends. We have eaten together. I've been over to your house.
Yes. We've watched the Zags lose together.
That we don't want to talk about.
No, we don't.
That was so sad.
That was sad. On my birthday.
I don't even like them.
No.
And you,
I didn't know you were rooting for Baylor.
No, I wasn't rooting for Baylor. I promise.
Okay. I am glad you're here. Yeah. I love Andy Thornton, and it is good to have you on the Riff. First time on the Riff. Is that correct?
First time. Long time listener, first time guest.
Super nervous?
Yeah. Yes, I am.
Oh, yeah.
I know, because I wanted questions that were going to happen, and you're like, no. That's not how. It's the Riff.
It's the Riff.
So let it go.
We're not going to prepare. Why don't we start now? Now, Andy, you are our campus pastor over the Dream Center campus, and we're going to talk about all things Dream Center campus.
Wow.
One of my favorite expressions of North Point is anything that happens here at the Dream Center, and the campus notwithstanding. But I want to back up the train a little bit. You've been at North Point on staff for how many years?
Almost 5.
Okay.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Almost 5 years.
Yeah.
Now, you had come to North Point earlier, maybe a year earlier attending?
2 years.
2 years
earlier. Yeah. And so it was the first time my wife, Sarah and I had looked for another church, because since 18, I had been in ministry. So doing associate pastor at a small church on the west side of Springfield. And then kind of went from there to a couple other churches. I did student ministry. I don't know if that's just the common run that you do, but you do student ministry. And then did kind of a teaching pastor role at another church. And anyway, ended up where it was church just had some hurt by the church, and it was one of those things where everyone has a lot of people have a story that have been in church for a long time that tend to have something happen that really affects them in a negative way, possibly to God, but more times than not we hear from church, and it may or may not be intentional. So anyway, we find ourselves that we're stepping away from ministry for a while, taking a break, and looking for a church. And that was really weird for us. We had been raised Baptist kind of through and through. And so it was always that question of, am I supposed to ask what kind of church this is? And then I couldn't figure out what kind of church North Point is. But we attended on a Saturday service, and it was great. It was incredible. So that's kind of where we got hooked. And right about that time is when you guys were talking about Dream Center and Jody and all the stuff that was going on there, and it was pretty cool.
Do you remember the first place we went out to eat?
I believe, was it Waffle House or where was it?
Probably was Waffle House.
I think it was Pizza House. I can't remember what it was.
I think it was a Waffle. We know it was House at the end of it.
Yes, it was something like that. Yeah.
But I remember meeting you. I'd heard a lot of legendary things about you.
Wow.
People had said, "Hey, Andy, I've got a friend Andy. He might be coming," or "I saw Andy there," and people had talked about you. And I remember first thing I ever noticed is watching you worship. And that's weird. I know that's kind of weird,
yeah.
but I looked over and I was like, man, there's someone over there who's just really into this song, and it looks like it means so much to them.
Yeah.
And I want to know his story. And
That's awesome.
I think we went to the Waffle House. But I want to back the train up.
Yeah.
You said a lot there that I want to pull the string on. And then we're going to land. We're going to land on where we are now and the exciting things in the journey here. But let's go back. You grew up in Springfield.
I did.
You live in a historic house, by the way.
I do.
Like it's registered.
I do. Yeah, it was built in 1867, so that's old for America.
Did you live in that house growing up?
I did. So yeah, I was. My parents moved there when I was in 7th grade.
And
I'm 44 now, so that that was a while ago.
I'm not going to ask. I'm not supposed to ask age or weight. So,
I know, right?
Yeah. You tell me whatever you want. So seventh. So you're in Springfield, and I know you played high school sports here in Springfield. But then you said you at 18 years old you were doing some type of church work.
Yeah. So
is that legal?
Yeah, I think so. It's I had gone from the Baptist church that I was raised at, right? My parents were kind of all over the map as far as denominations. They were always like into, of course, let's believe that Jesus is the way to get to heaven. So there was room there to go to different denominations. Right. And then I went from a fundamental independent Baptist church, which was like, don't wear shorts, like don't go to movies, like all that kind of stuff. And then I dated a girl who went to the Christian school that I was attending, and she was Southern Baptist. So we kind of thought all Southern Baptists were going to go to hell. So I ended up going
I didn't grow up in the Baptist world. So you got Independent Baptist, Southern Baptist, Missionary Baptist.
Yes, Anabaptist, American Baptist, Northern Baptist. Did you know there's Northern Baptist and Southern Baptist?
I just thought they were Baptists.
Yeah, I know,
so I'm learning.
Right,
I love it. So you're dating a different type of Baptist.
Right.
That's quite a
still
stretch.
in trouble. Right,
Wow.
Exactly. So
was it Sarah?
It was Sarah. So the lady that I married.
Did I just ruin the story?
You did. The thunder is gone now. It is all, no.
So you started dating her in high school?
Yes. So, I'm a sophomore. She's a freshman. So I started dating her. And as soon as we start dating, I decided, well, I'm going to go to her church. And so it wasn't everyone's like, well, if you're led by God to do it. And I was like, yeah, that's what it is. Led by God. And so I go to her
following
church.
the desires of my heart, really.
Right. And at the time, they had a student pastor that was at Southwest Baptist University. He had graduated and started doing some other stuff, and so they were without kind of a student pastor. So we were bringing this new guy in, and then Sarah at 17, they were saying, yeah, would you like to kind of also help lead music? Because Sarah just is really good with music and all this sort of stuff, so lead worship. And so she did, and they brought me on as like associate pastor because I had, when I was 16, said, man, I really want to give my life to ministry, like full-time ministry. And so I was, I don't know, in the Baptist church, you're kind of prayed over, and then, people say, hey, let's license this guy. So there was a licensure type thing that happened at 18. And then I think at 2001, there was the ordination whole thing to go full-fledged, all in, kind of thing. So. Yeah.
So you started leading people you're younger than you, and let's just do this.
It was so they let me preach too, and I would
in big people's church
and
everything.
In big church,
wow.
And they had recorded it on these things called cassette tapes. And
do we have those?
I know.
Are they out there?
I would love it. I think maybe Sarah's parents have one.
There's probably one in one of the Baptist denominational Hall of Fame out there.
Dude, it was so bad.
I would pay big money. I hope it was. I would pay even more for it.
It was the worst. I mean, I don't even know what I was saying, and I thought I was so good, man. I thought it was so good.
Did you nail it?
Yeah, I thought so. And that church was full of older people that were the sweetest, kindest people. Like, so after a message, they just, they were like, that just moved heaven and earth, whatever. I mean, they made me feel like $1 million. And
that's awesome.
So it was great. It was so good. And they just kept loving on Sarah and I and training us up. And it was a good church, really good
So,
church. It was on the west side of Springfield.
Okay.
I mean, it is raw over there. I love it. I've still got great friends that we meet with. A guy named Aaron that we met with, gosh, it was like 4 months ago. We went over to Maria's Mexican food downtown and
Been there.
yeah, it's a good place. And met with him, and he was one of the youth that we had in our youth group at that time. And he's gone through a rough life and went through all this drug stuff, and he is clean now for like 8 years. He's been clean.
Wow.
He loves on this kid that is not even biologically his. He's like the father of all fathers. I mean, it's blown my mind. I mean, what has happened through those kids. We've also had, kids that were in that same youth group, one of his friends that died from a heroin overdose. And it's just West Springfield and North Springfield. There's, as we know, like here at the Dream Center, we're right in that kind of intersection point of basically Northwest Springfield. And West is way different than North. It have a lot of the same issues, but the culture is just different. And so they each have their own like things that are their hurts and their hangups type stuff. But it was so great to have that as my first ministry, because I mean, we would have Vacation Bible School, and Sarah and I would be in the old church van, and we would go to pick up kids. We called it kidnapping back then. It's what we did.
And it was illegal.
It was legal back then. It was crazy because we would literally watch them walk down the side of the road, and we would have someone that went to either Studi or Central or whatever that was a school that was over there, and we would say, stop and tell them to come to church. And they'd be like, hey, let's come to church because we're gonna have fun. We'll bring you back around 8 o'clock. They didn't even ask their parents. They just jumped in the van. And so we took them to church. And like, this was a church that ran 60 or 70 on a good Sunday. And for the youth side of this Vacation Bible School we had like 80 or 90 that would show up on those nights. And what was great is we would talk about West Side. We would pull into the parking lot. We would drop off a group of kids that was there. There was like a ministry that came and helped us to do games and all that sort of stuff. So we had some college help that was there from Southwest Baptist University in Bolivar. So a lot of kids that had never experienced kind of inner city stuff. So we dropped them off, and as we're leaving, I'll never forget this one year. There's a group of kids. There's about 7 kids that are coming in on their own, and Sarah and I are like, oh yeah, we know who that family, like they never come to church. That's incredible. And as we drive off, and go get some more kids, when we come back, they've started an entire fight with the 2 groups of kids because that family was there to beat up another kid that had said something like the day before.
Oh,
and so we were like, oh, and all the college kids are just standing there like, what do we do? And I'm like, well, you break it up like first up. And they're like, what do we do? So it was fun. Good times when you're like, let's get a fight and then we'll have church.
How long were you youth pastor? Several years?
So that was 6 years, I think, that we were there.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep.
And then, so then you worked in other churches, and you worked with the legendary Hosey Blue, which I've heard just so many great things.
He's amazing.
How did that impact your life? Working with a man like him.
So that was wild. So I had gone to Southwest Baptist University. That's where I got my undergraduate. And when I was there, we had to intern with a pastor of a full-time church. And so my church wasn't full-time, so we had to find someone. Well, Hosey apparently said that he would do this. And I don't, like, a lot of times the churches that are larger typically don't have pastors that have that kind of access or that kind of time. But I don't know if he lost a bet or what the deal was, but he ended up saying yes. And so the guy who was my advisor at SBU was like, this is huge. You need to take this opportunity. And I really didn't have a choice because I had to do it to graduate. But my first attitude was, we're at a small inner city church. I don't want to go to some big church that probably doesn't even care about people, but they just care about numbers and they care about money and all this sort of stuff. So I hated the idea. And then I ended up going there. And when I met Hosey, I think that right there could have like made it or wrecked it, because when I met Hosey, he was real. Like that's who he was and who he is to this day. I sat in his office and he would sit in this like little rocker recliner type chair and cross his leg and look up to the ceiling, and he'd be like, Andy, just tell me your story. Tell me about your life, whatever. Just wanted to listen. And so I tell him, and he just starts talking about his life. And it's not even, in my opinion, it wasn't even training. It was just, I just want to know you as a person. And so we went through probably, I think it was about 8 months total of interning together. I learned a ton of different stuff. I learned the ins and outs of like large scale church and how many components and moving things are happening, and how many conversations have to go on for different things, and how especially the senior pastor, the lead pastor, is pulled. I know you know nothing about this, but is pulled like a million different directions to where they spend their time. Especially it seemed like in the Baptist church where they have like a very large Sunday school group, and no matter what church you go to, people tend to look at the pastor who preaches on Sunday morning as the person that they want to connect with, the person that can help them the most, the person whose prayers go a lot higher than theirs. All that
live just a touch closer to Jesus.
That's right. So like, yeah, I mean, it was where he would send me to the hospital to visit with people, and they would be like,
we got the intern,
the pinch prayer, like he's a pinch hitter. He's walking in, and so maybe, I mean, it doesn't look like the surgery's gonna go good. They sent Andy instead of Hosey, but no, but anyway, he was so gracious. He told me that he had gone through a time in his life, and he preached this many times, but he had gone through a time in his life where he kind of lost who he was. He kind of became a little more corporate, wore really nice suits, and he just lost his identity. And so he's from down in the Branson area, like they're the Bald Knobbers. His wife is the Mabes, and he as the Blues. They just have like a lot of history. Everybody knows a Blue. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure if you listen to Hosey long enough, you'll hear, I think, a cousin that married an aunt or something like that, because he shares that, and he's like, yeah, I know what it sounds like, and yeah, I think that's what happened, But he went down to a place called Bull Creek, and he got a rock out of the creek there, and he kept that in his pant pocket every day. And so when he would just reach in and, put his hands in his pockets, he would feel that rock. And he said it reminded him of who he was.
That's the weirdest. I do a very similar deal because I'm from Idaho. Okay. And that's why I always have a potato in my pocket. I just always, just a little snack wherever I go.
It's so good, man. It keeps you grounded.
Keeps me grounded, man. It really helps.
That's good.
That's good. Man. If we had a sponsor, I would say let's go to it right now.
Yes. That is awesome. Man. So anyway, I spent time there, and after that class was done, Hosey said, just let me know where you are and where you end up, like all that sort of stuff. So I ended up going out to First Baptist in Ozark, and I didn't want to do student ministry out there, but I knew I needed something that was going to be full-time, and that was offered. And the guy I don't know with Assembly of God if it's different, but we have like a director of missions that's kind of over the area, and they are guys and, I would say guys and gals, but Baptists are known for just guys. So they would have these guys that would say, hey, you might look at this position or this position and try to line you up with something that would fit well. And so I didn't want to do student ministry because
So they're assessing you to see where you can be best to be. Okay.
Yeah. So I go out to First Baptist, and I feel that out, and I think this is going to be good. However, I didn't want to do student ministry. And as a matter of fact, in my interview with them, I was like, I do not feel called to student ministry. And they had, I think, a very healthy concept of what student ministry was, because when I went out there were about 27 incredible adult workers that volunteered their time and worked for the student ministry. Like they weren't full-time, but every weekend they were hitting it hard, where you had like 7th grade boys, 7th grade girls class, 8th grade, all this sort of stuff. And then we even started like this college class and everything. And I had these key leaders that invested in kids. So what they wanted is me to be the leader that invested in the leaders to the kids. Yeah. So I was like, that I can do. Because my patience with teenagers is short, and it's like, but yet
you have so many.
I know. Yeah. True. That's true. So they were able to change my mind all about student ministry. So it turned out great. They had never gone on mission trips before. So I had gone, when I was at Golden Avenue, I had gone to Houston, Texas through this thing called Real Encounter Ministry. And they stayed at First Baptist Houston. We went into inner city. We did vacation Bible school stuff and everything throughout the summer. In July in Houston, Texas, it's just beautiful, right? Amazing to be there.
I can only imagine.
500 degrees. And it'll, you know how it is on any mission project that you do. I mean, it definitely affects your life. It's something that just opens your eyes to a world that you don't typically see. And so when I went to Ozark, I said, I'd really love to take these kids to Houston. And so anyway, we had like 28 sign up to go. And we had these great adult leaders that wanted to go with us, and we went down there, and it was amazing. I mean, it was kind of like, Ozark kiddos that are pretty middle class. Life is great. If you don't have the latest iPhone, you feel like you've been wronged or whatever, and they go down and they see these kids that have nothing, and so their hearts just like break for these kids. And so after that, we went to the next year, we went to Denver, Colorado, same story, inner city. We're able to go and help out some kiddos. And it just started creating like a momentum at that church of a mission mindset that I think still they continue to do at different parts of the U.S. But I was there for about 3.5 years, and then I get a call from Hosey Blue, and he's like, what are you up to? We're kind of looking for a guy who would do like pastoral care and teaching pastor. Like we're trying to figure out a spot for a need that we have here at the church, and wondering if you were interested. And so anyway, I loved meeting with him, and I thought, man, yeah, let me think about this, because he would be a great person to work for, knowing who he was and that he's real. And so anyway, then later on, I ended up taking that position, and then I went.
How many years were you there?
8 years.
8 years
at
there.
Ridgecrest. Yeah.
So let's catch up to speed of what is now, right?
Right.
Is you're attending North Point, you start hearing about the Dream Center,
Right.
And kind of tell us about your journey, because now you were working outside of a church ministry now,
Right.
And so what was that journey like to jump back in?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I was selling cars at Klaus Motor Company. I had also I'd had kind of a moment where I thought like I'm done with the church for a while. There were a few things that happened at Ridgecrest that just really ended unhealthy, and it wasn't really between Hosey and I. It was a different kind of issue, but where we kind of talked about me moving into the senior pastor position, that lead position when Hosey retires, because he was coming close to retirement. And so for the 8 years that I was there, he was I don't know, for lack of a better word, grooming to kind of take over. And it was rough. It was a hard experience, because it feels like you're on that third interview for 8 years, where
maybe one day.
Maybe one day. And in the Baptist church, it's and this may be in other churches too, but it's got to be a church-wide vote. And so you set it as a church of what percentage you want it to be affirmed. And at Ridgecrest, it was 85%. I think I ended up with 83 or 84% or something like that.
So you get to the spot where now there's retirement, they're voting in the pastor, and within 2 percentage points of a totally different outcome of life.
Right, don't get it. And all along the way, Hosey had told me, now it may not go this way or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was kind of a may not go this way, but surely it's going to go this way.
Let me pull that string a little bit.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what a vulnerable system.
Yeah.
Or what a vulnerable person to walk through that system it takes.
Yeah.
To say, okay, I'm going to present my ministry because I believe God has called us here. I'm going to share, and then I'm going to let people Yelp review. And if we get 85%, then I do this. And even 83%, which most of us would take any time on any test we've ever taken in our life, is, how did you feel? What did you feel when you walk away knowing, man, I'm 2 percentage points, right?
Yeah.
Or is there a hanging Chad? Can we do a recount? What do we do?
Yeah.
What did you feel?
So it was incredibly hard. I had really mixed emotions. There was an issue that happened where it felt like the church didn't know what to do at that moment. The leadership of the church didn't know what to do at that moment, and so, kind of a long story short, is I was asked to go ahead and leave the church, and it was in March of that year, and they would pay me all the way to December. So it was like, but we kind of need to move on. It's also vulnerable in that sense for the church when there are 80-some% that are not happy with the results of the vote. So then I think Baptist churches for years, not to judge on Baptist churches. I'm just thinking in this situation, there is that knee-jerk reaction of, it's possible that you could have a church split if I don't want to
you would have leveraged relationship, it could have really contrasted the vision of that local church.
Yeah, which would have been awful, and I think just horrible to do. But yeah, definitely that. And so it felt. I just remember this. I was told to not contact anybody or have communication with anybody because we need to just settle this thing down. And so I felt at like one of the lowest moments of my life.
You're so relational.
Everything was gone. Yeah. So all my, even like Jeff Steele, he's the most awesome guy. Was one of my best friends. I mean, I still love him to this day, totally. It's just that we don't talk as much. But I was told not to talk to him or pour into him. And he was a guy that throughout all those 8 years, he ran Remington's. So that was over the bar that we bought, to be able to do like community outreach stuff. And he was the guy I would go to during the workday because we were about a half block from Remington's, and I would sit in his office and decompress. Because there were times where I definitely didn't agree with other staff members. You just have those days. And there were certain staff members. We had some heated issues. I mean, we had a staff member that said, "I hope you fail in this, and I can't stand you."
Yeah, I would say
it was just rough.
That's contentious.
That's contentious. Yeah, and so I was like, man. I mean, a couple times I even cried in some staff meeting times, but it was rough. And so I couldn't do that. And so here's basically what happened is for about 3 months, I laid in my bed for 3 months at home because I didn't have to work. I was being paid, all that sort of stuff. But I stared at the ceiling in my room, and I was unbelievably depressed. Like when you have that feeling as a guy where you say, I want to fix it, I need to know what the next step is. What is my next move? How do I had nothing. Nothing was coming to me. I was just like, I just don't know what to do. I don't know who I am. I don't know that wasn't planned. Like everything was going in that direction to go a certain way. And so I went to counseling, even got on medication. I mean, I'd never felt that kind of pain because it was it's weird how it affects your whole body. You're sick at your stomach. You get headaches. You just don't know what to do. You had no passion whatsoever. I mean, it's like getting punched in the gut and then not and feeling that for like 3 months, and then you don't know who to blame. You're trying to figure out like, where does all this fit?
Right.
And it's like, it's not someone to blame. Like it kept coming back to that. And it was definitely not, like I kept thinking this, it's definitely not God. Like, God, I know this isn't you. So I didn't feel bad about him doing anything. I really felt like voting from a majority of people is the stupidest thing ever. Like I really struggled with that. Because I was like, first of all, I would have to pretend that every person who cast their vote, like, seriously sought after what God wanted, and then that happened. And I know that it's like any other voting that we do. It's a popularity contest or a typical, like, well, who are you going to vote for? Okay, that's who I'll vote for or whatever, So I was just like, what biblically does this have in any way? And so that was a huge thing. And so my whole faith in church was like really weird. I thought we were just really messed up. But then, after that, going to Klaus Motor Company, David Klaus and Lance, David's the dad. He owns the company. Lance is like the guy who runs everyday operation. Some of the greatest like Christian dudes out there. They had sold me cars before and just became really good friends. And they said, "Why don't you come work for us?"
They're on Highway 60, just east of Springfield.
They are, yeah. There's the they haven't actually paid for a spot, but there you go. So they said, "Come work for us," and it was, I think in their mind, it was, "Why don't you come sit out here and let us pour into you for a while?" So that he took that and ran with it, and I mean to tell you, it was so beneficial. It was constant uplifting, constant. You have not lost your calling. You have not lost who you are. It was just on and on and on. So really, really impacted me.
And then when you came to North Point,
Yep.
you're working somewhere else. You're just kind of soaking in the DNA, soaking in. No pressure to stand up, no pressure to get voted on.
Yes.
Just love Jesus.
Yes.
How did the journey of the Dream Center happen?
Well, I'll tell you, before that even took place, like coming when when you sit in a service and you're actually like coming for something, which that's it's interesting at North Point. I felt like I was surrounded by people who are coming to get something because we have this huge need and we're looking for an answer. Right. At other churches, like even at Ridgecrest, where I was at, where I love the people, there's so many people that are incredible. I felt like a lot of people came because that's what you did. You're a Christian, so you go to church on Sunday night, Wednesday night, anytime the church doors are open, because that's what God has called us to do, is to go to church or something like that. That was kind of the upbringing that I had. This was so different. It was like, no, I'm coming for answers. Like I have this gap inside me. And here I had gone like to college and to seminary, and like I've studied scripture and I have no answers. I'm like, this is weird to me. And so when I'm coming, I'm trying to be like, what was all this for? Like, what is God trying to teach me, or why did this all happen still, but in a much healthier way? So I was actually ready for an answer at that time. Yeah. So I don't know, again, I don't know if you preached it. I don't know if it was a point in a message, but it hit me when I was there that 100% that, Andy, what you had become, like Hosey had that rock in his pocket, what you had become in 8 years was not who I called you to be, was not who you were. So I had become someone who was interested in my yearly salary. I was interested in status. It was intoxicating when I walked into a conference and people like came over to me and they were like, man, I hear you're going to be taking over for Hosey. Like, you'll probably be leading this next. You'll probably be teaching these things next. And it's weird to sit, like, it's odd to sit in a conference and be like, I think I could do better than this guy talking, and actually want to, do that instead of like learning something. So it had become very much where and it's so slow and sneaky that I'd become this person that I would have hated. I mean, I think that's where it came to, is that when I was sitting at North Point and Sarah and I left that message, and again, I don't remember what message it was, so I'm sorry. I don't know but as we left, I was like, it was me, like God was saving me from this. He wants me to be who I am. Like, he created me in a way that I feel like, some people have asked me, like, Andy, it feels like you have a soft heart, or you're loving, or you're very nice, or whatever. And I'm like, I did not craft that or design that, or it was like God just made me a certain way. And with that, becomes this amazing like vulnerability, because it's almost like you're standing in front of people naked and you're like, here it is, kind of thing. So people can, hurt you or just kind of keep you somewhat protected through that. And I felt like North Point, the safe place to find and follow Jesus, I feel like North Point gave me protection in that, to where it's like, I think you can actually love hard on people. Like, you can really love people well. And we're not going to exploit that for something else. Mm-hmm. We're not going to try to record that and make it like, oh, here's who we are. It's more like, you be you. You bring the gift that God has made for you and how he's designed you, and use that. Don't stray from what God wants you to do. And so with that then came Dream Center. And I had no idea what Dream Center was, except I had heard about the Dream Center, I think in, is it Arizona? I know Los Angeles is the big one, but
Phoenix and LA.
Phoenix, yes. And so I'd heard him speak one time, and he had talked about how they go and in the middle of the night they rescue prostitutes. Like, they'll go give a prostitute a rose, and they'll say, look, at like 11 o'clock tonight, we're going to have a van that we come by, and we're going to pick up. If you want to get out of this lifestyle, we are going to pick you up, and you have to be right here on this corner at 11 o'clock. And if you do that, we will take care of you. And so 11 o'clock, he said there would be ladies the word had been passed around, and there would be like 5 or 6 ladies that were ready. And they came up and they picked him up in this van. And then sharing this story of the door opened, they got in, door shut, and the race was on. They were getting them back to the Dream Center as fast as they could, with pimps that were in cars behind them chasing the van to try to stop. all this stuff that was happening. And he said we'd go around the corner of the building, and as soon as we got there and we opened up the door, he said there were about 14 men, huge men, who barely knew Jesus. Like they just got out of prison and just barely asked Jesus into their heart. Like they'd only been saved for like 10 minutes. And they're all standing there like, I am going to take care of you. And they get him in the building and the pimps drive off and lives were changed. And I was like, oh man, that sounds like a cool church, you know? And so Dream Center, that was planted in my mind probably 4 years before I had gone to North Point. So then you guys said Dream Center, it's associated with Los Angeles and all that. And so I was like, what? And that's where I was then.
So you started working with the Dream Center in some of our activities and programming and just getting to know the neighborhood.
Right.
We started talking about a campus, launching a campus, and then COVID happens.
Yeah.
But we launched the Dream Center campus during COVID. That's not a church strategy move. Why did that work?
Oh, man. Because I think you look back on it and you think perfect time to have a church. Because we're not trying to get people who go to other churches to attend. We're trying to get people who have no community, no connection with community to say, you're welcome here and I want to get to know you. Like, that's it. You talk all the time about being known and needed. And the idea of, yes, we are a safe place, but we're not, this is what's so odd about North Point is that we are not into the numbers being the driving focus. You always look at numbers because you just want to, it's a statistic that you can look at and go, yeah, I need to see if we're being healthy or not. Like, are we going in the right direction? But I think Dream Center, especially even before the campus, has always been whether we are serving 30 people for dinner or 400 people for dinner, we're going to serve dinner to the best of our ability, and we're going to try to learn everybody's name, and we're going to try to hear what their stories are.
Yeah.
And I feel like people who actually, you know what? I probably am wrong on this, but I almost feel like people who are in poverty want to have their story heard more. They want to be recognized, like in the sense of that I'm a person. But I think that's the way it is with everybody, no matter how influential you are. Just to, like Hosey had said to me that time, where he's like, I just want to hear your story. Yeah. I think to be able to do that, that's what I love doing with people, is just tell me your story. And then once you do that, then you can hear what their needs are and how you can hopefully help, get them moving along in the right direction. So COVID helped very well,
I mean, when people are, when we try to offer help and hope, a pandemic actually provides a lot of opportunity to distribute help and hope.
Yeah.
And to describe the Dream Center campus, for those who haven't been there, how would you describe it to someone?
Yeah. So, man, it is the hard thing to describe is if you think of the Dream Center campus as just being Sunday morning at 10:15, then it's like a North Point campus. So it's we're gonna have a worship time, we're gonna have message. Ours is a little different because we'll have tables set up because we wanted to include a little bit more community, because since the pandemic we haven't had to have many meals that are inside. And so as anyone knows, like, even if you're not into focus on the family or anything like that, you know that when you sit around a table with people and you have dinner together, typically conversation is great. Yeah. When you're sitting in front of the TV having dinner, conversation is not that great. So it's better to have this table where you're all facing each other and you're able to talk, and then you're able to ask people what's their story. So we started trying that on a Sunday morning.
So after the service, you give it like a 10-minute countdown.
We do.
Hey, we're going to have conversation.
We do. And we've already done food. So at the beginning of the service, you get food. Now, whether it's a full breakfast, we do that on the first and the third Sunday of each month now. The second and the fourth Sunday are some like really good snacks. So like it's like a big thing of coffee cake. Exactly. But yeah, I've already got my volunteers that have texted me yesterday about what this next Sunday is going to be, and they are going off the chart. Like, it's like a farmhouse casserole with bacon and eggs and like biscuits and gravy, and like it's all going to be, it's going to be ridiculous. So So that's what you grab your food, you come in, you sit down, start eating. We're going to have a time of worship. We have the message, but on that at every table, we have what's called a table lead. And that's a volunteer who we know has enough like theology in their mind to be able to wrap around just the basics. And we ask the same questions every week. What's the most important takeaway you get from this message? What was like confusing or kind of like that you would have a question about? What's something that's confusing? And then the third one is
it's my favorite.
I know it's your
can I remember it?
You do it.
It's this. Is if you were to put this into play for a solid year, how would your life look different?
Yes.
Is that the question?
100%.
Why do you like that question?
I love it because you get people who I sit with teenagers at my table. So I have a couple teenagers in my family, and then the other teenagers, we don't have like a student pastor yet or anything like that.
Yeah,
so
we do.
We're like, yeah, exactly. And so we sit around the table, and what I love about that is, well, all three of those questions is that I hope that every person that's in that room, every time they listen to a message for the rest of their life, will ask those three questions.
Yeah.
It's just a great thing to have in your mind where you're like, man, here's my takeaway from this. And so what I love about the apply it for 1 year, it's like, it's not... Okay, so an example, right, is Chris Mooney, who he is an awesome teenage boy. I mean, and by awesome, here's what's funny is like you can sit here and say, oh, he's having problems at school, and you know he doesn't sit up straight all the time, and he doesn't do whatever, blah 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 blah. But this kid is like hungry to learn and do better, and he comes from a rough life. Like I mean, it's like super awesome family, but just a rough life. And so he told me, he said, here's the thing that kind of stuck out with me this a couple weeks ago. He said, I think that I've always heard if I do these little things wrong for a long period of time, that I always end up getting in big trouble because I'll do something wrong at school and it just keeps adding up to where the teacher finally just is so frustrated and then I get in trouble. So like Jeremy was saying, it's doing these little things right. It's just these little shifts that you take. And then he said, if I did this for a year, I'm like, what if you did like little right things for a year? And then he said, yeah, what if on like Monday I read the Bible, on Tuesday I prayed, and on Wednesday I did something that was kind of like Jesus. I bet after a while that would add up to doing like a lot of things really good, like actually doing good. You know, and I'm like, isn't that a concept? You know, like it's so like it doesn't have to be. I have to change my whole life tonight into something big and have an hour in Scripture every day and a prayer for however long. It was just adding little things as he goes. But like anyone would tell you, if it's your idea, if you come up with it, then you're probably going to apply it, or at least it's going to be a lot further than my idea. So that's having people think about what would happen in your life for that. So it's been fun, really fun.
Well, we're gonna have to land the plane here, but there's something I want to make sure we hit is every Sunday 10:15 we have our service at the Dream Center, and now the truth is, like you mentioned, is we're here investing and loving the community throughout the week, and you do that so well. The team does it so well. Some of the stories that come through of just the team serving, loving, doing life in this neighborhood is you're making a difference. The team's making a difference. Give me a couple practical ways. If someone's listening, they're in North Pointer, and they're saying, I think for a season, what I would like to do, I'd like to just serve on the weekends. A couple questions. One, is there room for them to serve? And what are a couple ways that could look like?
Yeah, we're all full up. There's just no way you can serve. It's done.
I get it. Maybe Republic.
Okay, so what I had mentioned earlier is that if you want to just look at it as a North Point campus on a Sunday, you can do that. But here's the thing. There are so many opportunities that we have on a Sunday to be able to do. We have to set up in a gym and tear down in a gym. So it has to look like a gym after we're done. So there's always that. But sometimes that doesn't float people's boats. Sometimes I've ran into people who love behind the scenes stuff and they live for that. And we love to have that as an opportunity. It's great. We absolutely 100% need that. But I think also throughout the week that to get involved in the Dream Center in any form or fashion is the Dream Center campus. Like I feel like we always talk about that as a staff because we distinguish like which roles and probably even, so sorry about that.
That really hurts our ears. Careful.
Sorry.
If you're jogging, I apologize. He just hit the mic. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. Oh man. So here's the thing. When you look at the Dream Center campus, it's not just what we do on Sunday morning. We look at it as the budget and all this sort of different stuff. It is all one thing.
Yeah.
And Jody with Dream Center, I would not want to work next to anybody else. She is unbelievable, incredible. She dreams big. She is a resource that is like incredible. Her mind goes into 5,000 different directions. She knows all the ways to help people in Springfield. So case in point is we have a family right now that's going through some hard times, and I have a list of things that we need to get done for them. And most people couldn't afford to do that. But if you have contacts of people who can make that happen. So if you may be out there and think that I want to volunteer, but maybe I don't have time, but you work at a company that does X, Y, Z, right? And all of a sudden we know who you are, and then you're able to do that. And maybe on the weekends, you're able to help do some carpentry work or some, whatever the case is, or your business does this, or, you've been trained in something like this. Whatever your resource is, that obviously can be used to help these families who just need a little step in the right direction. Yeah. So there's that too. There's serving on Wednesday nights that you can do with dinner, which is super fun because we have drive-through dinner. This Wednesday night, well, I won't say this Wednesday night because this will probably be done different at a different time. But the fourth Wednesday of each month, Crosslines also gives us food to give out. And we usually have a car line a mile long and people that are constantly here to be able to get that kind of help that they need. So if you want to pass stuff out like that, it's incredible.
Okay, so Andy T at northpointchurch.tv.
Yeah.
If someone emailed you, Andy T at northpointchurch.tv, we have a significant place to plug you in. If you're a North Pointer and North Point has become a place you attend church, God called us to be the church. And I would challenge you, maybe for the next quarter, the next season, you say, hey, I want to jump in and serve either on the weekend, throughout the week. Andy, from my perspective, I just believe with the Dream Center throughout the week, all the programs, it's the tune of heaven. Sunday specifically, it's the lyrics of heaven.
Yeah.
And they're both helpful. We want to be that. Thank you for loving this community. You make following Jesus attractive because the way we get to see you in your joy. Thank you for serving well. I am so thankful that you came into North Point one day wanting to experience Jesus and that he met you there. And I know every week that's true for people who walk in at the campus. So,
well, thank you so much for letting me be who I think God created me to be.
Yeah.
And it's and that you've done it in a safe way. I appreciate that.
Awesome. We need to buy us some vans, it sounds like. We're missing on a lot of ministry. So, VBS.
White vans and go kidnap kids. What could go wrong?
We need to find 14 strong dudes first. Hey, thanks so much for listening to another episode of The Riff. And we'll come back at you next week with another episode. Have a great week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Riff. Submit a question for the podcast at northpointchurch.tv/podcast. We'll have a brand new episode every week, wherever you find podcasts.